What is art? What makes something art? Is it art because it's in a museum or gallery? Is it art because an artist makes it?
Conceptual art is art where the idea is more important than the object.
An idea itself can be a work of art. Something in your head, something that you might just write on a piece of paper or might say to somebody. It's not necessarily a painting or a sculpture or a tangible thing, but the idea behind it is the work of art.
Marcel Duchamp is probably the single most important figure in the birth of conceptual art. He said basically he didn't want art to be primarily about what you see. He wanted it to be about what you think. The most famous example was his presenting in an art exhibition a urinal, a standard issue American urinal, which he signed with somebody else's name and said, "This is a sculpture."
Duchamp, in a way, raised the question, what is art? And then allowed people to say it might be anything. And since then, essentially, art has been opened up to a vast range of, you might call them just possibilities.
Vic Muniz, who's a Brazilian artist, has done a project where he hired a skywriter to draw clouds in the sky over New York City. The idea behind it is a sort of childlike fascination with how does representation work? Why do we look at that and think cloud? So the work is about the contrast between the real cloud and the representation of the cloud.
One of the principal strains of conceptual art is to take apart something that everybody thinks is common sense. Well, supposing somebody shows you frustration. They don't act it out in a dramatic way the way you'd find in a kind of naturalistic play where they, put their hand on their head and they grimace and so on and so forth. They do frustration, where they do something that is, as far as one can determine, pointless and endless and self-punishing. And that's frustration.
Conceptual art is difficult for a lot of people because it's not always clear what the idea is behind it when you look at it.
Bossy Burger is a performance that Paul McCarthy did on a discarded set of an old sitcom in which he dresses up as an increasingly nutty, manic TV chef. I think McCarthy's work is concerned about impulses we can't control. He's doing these things which you may sense are somewhere in you, but you've tried your whole life to suppress. It's quite possible you may not like McCarthy's work. It's not something you'd go to for pleasure the way you look at a Chardin or a Monet. But art isn't necessarily about what you like. It's also about touching you in some way or challenging you.
Janine Antoni is a young artist who made a big splash with a piece called Loving Care. And in this piece, she had a bucket full of Loving Care hair dye. She crouched on the floor of the gallery and painted the whole gallery floor with the hair dye.
I honestly can't tell you what it means, but I do know that she's put a burden, if you will, on me to figure it out. Conceptual art is precisely about not having pat answers. And that the more that you feel and the more that you're puzzled, the more the art has done its job, and you as a viewer have done your job. You've become part of what it is that the artist has tried to initiate.